Joe, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed for your time. The shipping companies are proposing a small levy on the fuel that they consume. That's not going to stop the criticism from environmental campaigners.
No, it's not. I mean, we welcome the move of the industry to start considering the pollution and start taking into account the pollution that they're creating. But we still think that this fuel tax is a drop in the ocean. It's really not enough. More needs to be done. If you look at the cost of fuel, it's $350 per ton, and they're proposing a tax of $2, which is even less than 1% of the cost that they're actually paying today. And if you bring it back to European carbon prices, you see that today it's 40 times cheaper than actual carbon prices today we have in Europe. So from our side, if industry is really ready to change, much more is needed.
Joe, what about the responsibility of the consumer here? We're always very quick to kick the big corporates, the big companies. I wonder about the responsibility of the private shopper, just looking at what we buy, the stuff we buy, shipped from all over the world, and whether or not it's us as private individuals who need to intervene here and just decide that we're not going to buy stuff that's been flown around the world because of its environmental cost.
I think the main principle is why should I, consumer, feel guilty for buying gifts for my family, my kids, when actually it's up to governments and industry to clean up their fleets. I mean, when you look at the shipping sector and the emissions that they've created, emissions have continuously grown because they've continuously been unregulated. I mean, fuel, they don't pay tax on their fuel, there are no ticket taxes, no VAT. Some companies don't pay corporate taxes either. And despite this, emissions continue to grow and we don't do anything about it. So before thinking about the consumer responsibility, I think we should put responsibility back onto governments and industry to make sure they make the proper investments in clean alternative solutions to clean up their fleet.
And taxation on their admittedly dirty fuel surely is worth exploring, isn't it? When you look at that kind of pressure in the motor car market, all of us in Europe and the United States, by and large, are now buying smaller, more fuel-efficient cars. The same surely would apply to the global shipping industry.
Exactly, but I think that the tax that's being proposed is not enough. So I think there are two things to keep in mind. And you do talk about the car industry. And today we see car manufacturers investing 60 billion euros in cleaner cars, in electric cars. And this is thanks to regulation. This is thanks to ambitious CO2 standards, energy efficiency standards that have been developed by Europe. Now, we've done that for the car sector, now we need to do it for ships. We should not only ask shipping companies to pay for the emissions that they produce, but we should also mandate CO2 standards for them to respect. So all ships that come at European ports need to respect a certain CO2 standard. I think now is the time to actually change things, and by not only CO2 standards, but including shipping in the carbon markets, in the EU carbon markets, the EU ETS, we could generate approximately 3.6 billion per year only, and this could be reinvested even more.
Joe Dardenne in Brussels, thank you very much indeed for talking to us.